Okay, in this segment, we're going to take a look at using the Create Bezier Shape tool. And before I get started, I'm just going to go Control A and delete all these shapes that I'd made so far just to clean up my space. And so I'm going to go over here, and this is where the tool is. It's set on Create Freehand Shape, so I'll left click and hold until the other two options come up. And this time we'll switch to the Create Bezier Shape tool. Now, very similar to the Create Freehand Shape tool, but the main difference is with the Create Bezier tool, if I click the first time, I'm given the dotted line to create a line. And if I click down, it doesn't let go like it did in the freehand tool. It just keeps the line continued. And if I wanted to create all, corner points, then I can just keep clicking and clicking to create my shape. And just like any other time, if I right click now, I'll be creating an outline only. If I right click again, it closes the shape and it's finished. Now, continuing along with the Bezier shape, if I do the same thing, left click, left click, left click, left click, left click, left click, and I go over from the last point, put the last point over top of the first point, it's going to connect that shape and fill it in. Now, just like the Create Freehand tool, I can continue on. So if I wanted to have a hole, I could go left click, left click, left click, and left click and create a hole. And whenever I'm finished creating a shape, I right click to represent to the software, I'm done using that tool. Actually, I'm done making that shape. I would have to right click a second time to say I'm done using the tool, because as you can see, I'm still doing a Bezier tool, and I could keep drawing Bezier shapes. Right click to let go of the shape, the object, right click a second time to let go of the tool and come back to my select tool. So there I've created some Bezier shapes, but they aren't very curved. I just simply used left click and got all corner points. Now, the beauty of the Bezier is, if I turn on the Bezier, and maybe I'll just zoom in a little bit closer here, if I left click, just like I said, I get a corner point. Now, if I left click and drag, I get the ability to curve my line. And I'm just going to play with this for a minute. I won't let go. But you can see here that as I make my arrows, the further I pull it away, the longer those arrows get, the more that it affects my curve. And I can also, by pulling these arrows around, I can affect what type of curve we get. So for example, if I put a line right there, let go, now my next line, see, this next line is affected by the arrows of the previous line. So it's when you click and drag like that, the arrows that we're creating affect not only the curve that we've already made, but they will also affect the curve that we're about to make. And so you can see here that every time I click, so I click and drag, let go, click and drag, let go, click, drag, let go, click, drag, let go. I don't want a curve, so I'll just click. And I don't want a curve, so I'll just click. And if I don't want a curve, I just click. Now, if I click right here, I'm going to be closing my shape, and it'll fill it in. But I haven't let go of the tool yet, so I still have the ability to go left click, left click, left click and drag, left click and drag, and left click to create a hole. Now, whenever I right click, it finishes that object. Didn't let go of the tool, so I could make another one, but it finished that object. So the biggest difference between the freehand shape is I don't have that Bezier function going on, and so when I use the Bezier tool, I get left clicks for everything. Left click, I get corner points with every left click. If I want a curve point, it's a left click and drag. Left click and drag. Left click and drag. And you can get very good at using those the left click and drag to creating your shapes of your design. So obviously, if we had some sort of an image on our screen right now as a backdrop, I could use this Bezier tool to quickly draw some very specific shape from a piece of artwork and not just doodles on the screen as I've been doing for you so far. Anyway, that's the Bezier tool, and a lot of the same things that apply with the freehand tool apply with the Bezier tool. So for example, if I wanted to draw, a bunch of lines, I could just go click, left click and drag, left click and drag, left click and drag, right click, gives me a line, start again, click, 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 right click, 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 right click. And when I right click a second time, it connects all three of those shapes together as one object. And as before, we could right click over top of this shape, and then we could choose to break apart the shape if we wanted to, and then we get back to the individual objects that I had sort of as I had drawn them. So basically the Bezier tool is very similar to the freehand tool in regards to how it functions. The main difference is in the freehand tool you just simply click and drag and it follows your mouse like a pencil, whereas in the Bezier tool I click to get corner points or I click and drag to get a curved point. And so that's a little bit of extra help. And if I join the shape, it fills it in with thread. And again, I can cut a hole out of it just by drawing that hole prior to right-clicking to finish the shape. So that's the Bezier tool. And again, just as I showed in the last segment, if you use the Show Help tool and then click on your Bezier shape tool, it's going to come up and give you some detailed information about creating Beziers and Bezier handles and how to use them. And it'll also talk, I noticed in here it talks about using the Control key and the Alt key, and those are things that I showed once before, but maybe I'll show that again while we're here. So for example, I'm going to hold the Control key down and click my Bezier, and notice it gives me that sort of array of, what do I want to call these? It's like a radius. So basically it's going to make it easy for me to draw some sort of a specialized shape because I have my Control key. If I let go of my Control key, I go to the free-flowing, anything goes. But as soon as I hold my Control key down, I get those angle lines that I could therefore use to help me with my designing. And the same thing with the Alt key. So if I draw another shape and I hold the Alt key down and put it down, it wants to snap to my grid lines. So just like when we were editing the shapes before, using the Control key and the Alt key enables you to just specifically get your points to land in places that may be exactly what you're trying to get. So yeah, that's the Bezier Create Freehand Bezier Shapes.